Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another broadcast. Today I wanted to talk about Dan Slott's The Amazing Spider-Man number 22, or more specifically, his clone conspiracy tale, which hinges on your ability to pretend that consciousness is an illusion, that souls do not exist, and that what makes you is all just a bunch of atoms and molecules bouncing around in the right combination in your head. It's creatively tone deaf in a nation where close to 300 million people probably believe in a soul, but it's also to be expected at Marvel these days. First, a recap. When we last left off, Peter had just found out that the Jackal was Ben Reilly the entire time. He freaks out at this reveal and the knowledge that Uncle Ben's grave has been dug up for cloning purposes. He lets loose with a barrage of punches, but Ben just sits there and takes it, begging to explain. Peter relents and we find out exactly what happened to him during the original Clone Saga years ago. Miles Warren found Ben's ashes and, predictably, started more cloning experiments. He goes off into a fairly decent monologue on his life and desire to establish his own identity separate from Peter Parker in a way that brings new readers up to speed. We then find out that Ben was cloned in one of the Jackal's labs over and over and over again. With each new clone, memories of Peter's life remain, but also the memory of his last death. There was Gwen and Uncle Ben, that faithful science experiment that went wrong, and all the good times with Aunt May, but there were also drownings and electrocutions, deadly viruses, gases, and fire. It's all incredibly sadistic, and when Ben realizes that soon his mind would only be filled with, quote, non-stop existence of pain and suffering, he decided to fight for all the people he needed in his life, like Peter Parker, to make it worth living. He breaks free to the shock and awe of Miles Warren, and then chokes the man nearly to death. He stops with a creepy-looking grin on his face, because at that point, the new Jackal is born. Long story short, Miles is knocked out and wakes up in one of his own tanks with numerous clones. He doesn't know if he's the real deal or not. Ben has created the red and blue pill that will keep clones alive, but the real Miles does not know who he is. Not taking the pill is tantamount to playing Russian roulette. Ben's plot is hatched to make sure, quote, no one ever has to suffer again, and then the book cuts back to Peter Parker and Ben on the tarmac after their fight. Peter says, tell me more. Okay, where do I begin with this? One interesting side note is that Dan Slott's Renew Your Vows not too long ago had a version of Peter Parker that was locked in a holding tank by a regent that was very similar to the one used by Miles Warren here. He too broke free from a state of suspended animation and, like Ben Reilly, immediately choked out the villain in a fit of rage. And, like Ben Reilly, he did not kill the man. In both cases, the scientist who created the tank seemed to think it was, quote, impossible for Spider-Man to break out. It's an interesting echo across the multiverses, which I'm more than happy to discuss in the comment section below. But I digress. Here's the thing. Peter Parker is a guy who died and was resurrected. He had a near-death experience that featured Uncle Ben. He was, quote, Ghost Peter, for lack of a better term, in Superior Spider-Man for well over a year. We know that Peter doesn't go around spouting religious verse on the street corner, but at the same time, it's been well established that there is a Judeo-Christian spirituality to him. In short, he believes that we have a soul. Therefore, in the clone conspiracy, he would treat every single clone as just that, a clone. The Ben he is talking to has all the memories of the previous Ben, but he is still a clone. The spirit or being or essence of the previous person is gone. And the new clone is simply someone who needs to find their own unique identity within the context of a very bizarre welcome into the world. It is unfortunate that Ben Reilly has all the memories up to the point of the last one while still being a unique person. Yes, I'll agree with that. But is he the Ben Reilly? No. Peter Parker would never say, "Tell me more," because to believe otherwise would fly in the face of his own spiritual experiences. Heck, the guy has flown within the astral plane with Doctor Strange in addition to his resurrection. He's fought demons. I could go on, but at the end of the day, it all boils down to this. Life is more than two cells dividing over and over again until something exists with the right chemical interactions that tells you that you're you. Dan Slott is either telegraphing to the world that he is an atheist, or he's twisting Peter Parker's established history to suit the needs of the clone conspiracy. And that's fine if he's an atheist. He has every right to not believe in God. But acting as if these clones are the original people, days and months and years after their deaths, is strange. Heck, the whole storyline is not called the Lazarus Conspiracy because everyone knows these are clones. One could write the Lazarus Conspiracy, but that would take a depth and breadth of spiritual knowledge that Dan Slott has never demonstrated. Heck, even Ben's lines about death and cloning, i.e., there's no good way to die and no one has to suffer again, are telltale signs of a character that does not believe in God. Scientist Leon Kass wrote in 2001's Shame and Its Limits, Why Not Immortality, that mortality is a blessing because it, quote, means that it is possible to give one's life not only in one moment, say on the field of battle, but also in many other ways in which we are able in action to rise above our attachment to survival. I say this because people who do not believe in God fail to see how men and women of faith could be okay with death, and that man-made immortality would be a form of torture. It would sort of be like living in Bill Murray's Groundhog Day. Anyway, I could go on, but the point still stands. The clone conspiracy requires readers to adhere to an odd premise about what constitutes life, a single life, in order to generate interest. If you think Peter Parker would consider life to be something akin to a video game where if the zeros and ones line up, a character could die a Mario and Luigi death 10,000 times and he would still be Peter Parker, then perhaps you'll enjoy it. If you think Peter Parker would believe all humans have a soul, then this might not be your cup of tea. That's about it for now, but as always, I want to hear what you have to say. Let me know what you think in the comments section below, and as always, if you like what you've seen here, check out douglasernsblog.com for more coverage just like this. See you next time.